Maybe we won't go.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I've got messages on the CT the white out. A big change order, there was some of that we didn't need. Yeah, and they're not getting back again. Part of it is in Blackwood side. So I'm gonna end up closing this year. So there's no reason.
We're on.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah, it'd be a January. No, it'll be, the building goes out in January. No, but the bill, well, it'll be for the whole year, it's really good in January, actually.
That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
are you putting the date?
What I said would be the bill due for the same as we did last year. Yeah, the bill will be out in January. Following the 10th of January, you pay that bill, like the one that you're getting.
Okay, we're gonna get started here in 1 minute.
Hi. Oh, thank you so much. I forgot I asked you. I know you did. I forget.
Okay, before we get started, don't forget, speak slowly and into the mic. Okay, this is, committee meetings of the Barton City Council, and today is December 7th, 2020. Our first committee meeting will be with streets, sidewalks, and lighting with Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring the order streets, sidewalk, and lighting. Today is December 7th, 2020. It's 6 p.m. at the Active Adult Center. All members of the committee are present. All members of council are present and guests noted on my sheet. There is no request for legislation today. I'm going to open it up for miscellaneous discussion if anybody has anything. Seeing no miscellaneous discussion, I have a few things that I want to bring up. This is more getting the status of Fifth Street in Lincoln. I've seen them pouring concrete today. It was Kenmore Construction, and that was on Lincoln. Just, Mr. Tracy, could you provide us an update on that project?
Yeah. Did you receive my email last week?
I did.
Okay. Yeah. So they were hoping to have the pipe work finished by today. So it sounds like they got it done. They're doing the concrete. So they'll be restoring any concrete curbs, doing box out around storm inlets, things like that. And then once the concrete's completed, that'll be it for the project. And then the spring, they'll come back and mill Lincoln Avenue and do the restoration of Lincoln Avenue. And then ODOT will be taking care of everything on 619.
So what they have paved and patched up on Fifth Street, is that final? What they're,
So we'll probably, at the very end of the project, they'll probably go through and see if there's anything they can do to smooth it out. But it's gonna stay like that throughout the winter. We'll have to maintain it that way.
Yeah, the reason I was asking is it's still in pretty bad shape, even though it's pretty rough. I have two other things I just wanted to bring up. There was a house fire on Grandview, besides the point. And when I walked down there, because it was a street over, I really had a good look, like out of the car, looking at Franklin Avenue. And this was at Franklin and 6th. There's issues at Franklin and 7th. Jefferson is in pretty rough shape in between 5th and 6th. There was something online about on Hopkinton near the railroad tracks, and I mentioned a couple weeks ago about the big gaps at the intersection of State and Wooster. I'm seeing a lot of roads like in really bad condition. Beyond the 4th Street repair that if you're familiar, the 4th Street off of Van Buren. Is there anything we can do to, being so late in the year, to I can only imagine what they're gonna look like in the springtime after the winter and the plows hit them. I mean, if it don't damage the plow, which I highly doubt it, because I've seen those things, but it's gonna tear the roads up. They're already pretty bad. So is there anything we can do before winter to try to address some really bad areas? Or are we just done out of options as far as what?
Well, without seeing it, I mean, I'm sure, that we could see what it looks like to see what the options would be. We're still not out of the window to get hot mix, so we'll still have to do what we've always done with the regular patching.
Okay.
In those areas. So if you have areas like that, please submit the tickets so we can get to them. We don't always know about them unless they're
Right.
unless they're brought up.
Submitted a lot. I wanted to touch base. This year we didn't do a road program or the side road program or the secondary residential roads due to the pandemic and the uncertainty of funds. And next year, are we considering doubling our street program? Since we did get a lot of CARES Act money to take care of a lot of uncertainties, or do we have plans on some of these? I honestly, I don't know how they're going to make it through winter, but do we have plans on possibly doubling the side road program next year?
Yeah, I don't know if whether it'll be doubled or a beefed up version of what would have happened this year, but we're definitely looking at all the areas in town that need road restoration done. It'll be definitely more robust than what we would have had planned for this year.
I don't have anything else. Oh, sorry, Ms.
I
Fry.
just wanted to bring up, I saw that in the paper what you talked about with the railroad.
Mhm.
And it's my understanding that anytime the railroad tracks are fixed, the path over them, the railroad is responsible for that.
Correct.
And it takes us a really long time to get them to address it.
Yep.
So I just wanted, if anybody brings that up to you, I would like you to be able to
Yeah.
tell them that.
I happen to just see it on social media, and I'm seeing a lot of really bad areas now. I'll report them and try to get other people to report them, but it just seems like they're so far beyond repair. I hope that they're on the list next year, or if they were on the list for this year. So that was just my concern and question about beefing up the program or doubling it next year.
And feel free to make those suggestions for your ward for next year, because I do get comments from various council people regarding their ward and feedback they're getting from residents in their area and just things that they've seen in their ward. So we can even sit down and discuss those roads in your ward as well.
Awesome.
And as far as the railroad tracks, are we talking about the ones on Hopkins?
Yeah.
So I spoke with Councilman Jader about these the other day, and we did actually, about a month ago, we patched right up against the tracks. But anytime you get any type of, I don't even know if that track gets used anymore, but just the vibration of the rails, the fall into just the expansion contraction of the steel versus the asphalt, that stuff just pops immediately. So There's, it's been documented that it was taken care of probably about 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago. I'm the one that drove over it, so I called the street department and had them take care of it. And it just popped out again. So we spoke to ABC Railroad today regarding the tracks. We're filling them again. And then from now on, ABC's, we're gonna contact them when there's issues on those tracks. And they've committed to doing some more permanent repairs there in the future, hopefully next year.
Yeah, that was just an example. So just to confirm, we do have some time possibility that we can still fix pretty bad areas, as far as filling in potholes.
Yeah, so typically DNR RUP, last winter they actually stayed open all winter long. It just depends on their maintenance they have to do in the winter. In the past, they would shut down in January just to do maintenance in the plant for a whole month and open back up when the weather permitted. So, if it's in the teens, they're not going to open. If it's in mid to upper 20s, they can still open, but they'll wait till like 10 o'clock to do it. So we have the capability of doing that, and they're still open now. If it's a mild winter like last year, they'll continue to stay open through the winter.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Bennett?
Thank you, Chairman. I was just wondering how much money we saved by, obviously it's the issue aid money, but how much money we saved by not doing the road program this year? And if we used any of that money that we may have used to pay, if we beefed up our actual in-house repairs with some of that money.
Right, that's actually a great.
That money by ordinance cannot, or by passage of issue A cannot be used for anything but street resurfacing.
No, I understand that.
Well, it can't be used in our street department.
Okay, so it can't be used to patch. Okay,
Correct, it can't be used.
fair enough. I wasn't aware of that. So in essence, then we saved all of the money that we had budgeted for this year.
Correct.
Okay, so in essence, we could potentially, as Mr. Greer mentioned, double the amount of work that we do next year, depending on the cost.
Potentially, yes. So we're going through that process right now.
Mr. Huddy?
Thank you, Chair. With not doing the side street program, didn't we use a good deal of the issue aid money for the matching grants when they came due for certain projects?
I believe that those were already allocated as far as issue aid, but.
So if you remember, earlier in the year, we sent the money to ODOT and escrow for those Waterloo Road and South Van Buren. So hopefully I'm pretty confident that project came in well under budget, so we'll get some money back into the street capital fund from that project. But when we budget out, there's a 5-year, 6-year plan, because you have to make sure that you retain the funds to match these projects throughout. Worcester Road West is a $6 million project. We have to have the funds for our 10 or 20% match, whichever part of the project it might be. So we have to consider that when all that money is coming from the same pot, or two pots, I guess, permissive and the street capital fund. So we have to look out 5 years or 6 years, depending on how many projects we have, to look at how we allocate those funds, and then we can allocate the rest of the funds towards the residential street resurfacing.
Very good.
Mr. Jerry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have you ever thought about bringing the tar and seal? That'd save us some money. We buy a machine of salt and.
Yeah, we were discussing that the other day. There's some areas, you can't really use it where there is a storm system.
Yeah.
But chip and seal, although it is a surface covering, it has no structural integrity to it. It's literally just a cracked seal with rocks in it. So we've discussed using it on certain areas in the city where maybe it's a little less developed infrastructure in the right of way. For example, something like maybe East Tusk Extension, NOLA, somewhere like that. As far as using it in areas where you have a lot of utilities, maybe the hills are steep, be a lot of erosion. That's not a great area to use that. But we've had those discussions internally.
We have used that on Hudson Run, for example, or Lockwood Road. So, yeah, we do use that, like Mr. Tracy said, in the appropriate setting.
That'd be great, I think.
Yeah.
Again, said it before, 1,000 times, if we're gonna get support from the residents and business owners, the biggest complaint I hear is the streets. If we take care of the streets, we'll get a lot of support, a lot of love from the residents. You guys are doing a great job. Thanks again for getting back to the railroad. I'm happy to appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thanks again for doing all that.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mrs. Angela,
And I'll second.
and seconded by Mrs. Fry. We are now adjourned at 6:12 p.m.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services, Mr. Draper.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services, meeting December 7th, 2020, at the Development Center. Time is 6:13. Members present noted, or council members noted also, and guests. We have two topics to discuss today. First one, request legislation, draft ordinance, foundation for King's Flowers, to honor and give public recognition to the Pfeiffer family as they celebrate the 100 years of honoring King's Flowers. Open this up to discussion. Councilmember, anybody?
I got one thing,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Draper. Kane, Pfeiffer, he's a really, good person to deal with. I've been dealing with him for years. I have friends in, Atlanta. They call him up for flowers and stuff, and they know they're on first name basis. So he really, takes care of them. They don't even ask around for anything else. They just call Kane up and some of my friends, I didn't even know it, and said, you know Kane? I said, yeah. So I want to talk to him. I said, yeah. You know, so I really think this is a good thing for him. And it's long overdue. So,
They did a great job.
yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Rhoda?
Thank you. I just want to say that it definitely shows dedication and gratitude to the city of Barberton for them remaining. They could have taken their business anywhere. And so they're obviously dedicated and committed to the city of Barberton. I think this is a worthy business to honor.
Anything else? Motion to approve?
So,
I will second that.
Second motion. Alright. Can we vote on that, please?
I,
yes.
Thank you. Second draft ordinance, Foundation Jacob Clemens. To honor and give public recognition to Jacob Clemens in becoming a professional WWE referee. Opens up discussion. Hey, surprise, surprise.
I'll probably be the only one able to comment on this because as I look around this room, I'm probably the only one who religiously watches big time wrestling. WWE is not an easy business to break into, and once you do, you are on the road at least 325 days a year. And when I say on the road, you aren't flying, you're driving. A lot of times you have to pay your own expenses throughout every trip. Just to make it and accept it and take on a whole new life of its own. And it's not just an honor, but it's a commitment. And once you're in there, man, it's a tough business, but if it's something you love, like I do, I respect him for being able to do that.
I knew you'd like that right away.
Like I said, I'm probably the only one here that watches it, so I know exactly what about the business.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody else? All right, motion approved, please.
I will, I'll make that motion.
Second.
And vote, please.
I,
Yeah, thank you very much. And opens up to miscellaneous discussion. Council members? Mrs. Rhoda?
Thank you. This this is directed, towards, I thought maybe the mayor might know. Do you have any idea what the, have you been in touch with SUMA as far as what the occupancy is there? I know I've received a lot of phone calls over the last week or two asking if I had any idea where people could get a test. And I know the county just had a drive-up, before COVID. I didn't know if you maybe had an update for us on that, or?
Yeah, I talked to Suma Hospital at least weekly. The county had 2 drive-in tests on the 4th and the 6th, just the other day. You can still log in as you could before to Rite Aid and CVS online. So the same there, access point. Suma is doing a lot of transitioning between their facilities, patients and staff. Like we're seeing, nobody's at full capacity that I know of, not like New York or LA or some of these larger cities. But they're doing everything they can to make sure that they have the capabilities, staff-wise, to maintain the patients.
And what about, I guess this might be more of a Summit County Health Department issue, but, Pleasant View Nursing Home. I know that all but 5 residents, are positive or were positive, as well as over 50 employees. Do you have any idea if there's been involvement with the county there, or if it's, posed a problem for our paramedics, or?
The Summit County Health Department's aware of it, has been involved in working with the family that facility for a number of weeks now. Yep.
Where did you get that information? Those are not numbers I've ever seen.
My mother-in-law is in Pleasant View, and we get an update about once every 5 days. And I guess my concern from a community aspect is that they there aren't even employees to report how the residents are doing. So it was over 8 days before we even heard anything. So they have a website you can go to. It's not directly on their Pleasant View website. It is a secondary website that they set up, and they release numbers maybe every 4 days. And the last one was, I'm sorry, I don't want to tell you the exact wrong number because I have the exact
No,
number.
that's okay, I'm just curious about it, because the last time I checked.
So resident 96 cases and employee 50, that was updated 12/3/2020, 11/20 a.m.
Okay, because
And I know that they had 105 residents, I think, but I know that some have been transferred out. So I was just curious how
do you know if that's cumulative or current?
that was current. So over the last 6 weeks, so I think it was just kind of a ripple effect. It started
No,
off.
I'm not doubting that. I'm not doubting that. It's just that the state of Ohio has a pretty nice tracking map on the website that you can look at. It's called, instead of nursing homes, it's titled long-term care facilities. So it's LTCs. You can drill down to the zip code in which the LTC is located. They do not name the LTC, but they give you the stats. So that's.
Yes, I've actually got that.
And I've never seen numbers like that, but I haven't checked as of, what did you say, 12/3?
That was 12/3. That was the latest that I was on, and at that point, it's everybody, so.
And I do know this, that, Summit County is involved with the influx of the, virus, and they're aware of it, and as far as I know, they won't give us information other than what we can find somewhere else.
Right.
It's a private business, and it's private citizens.
So I don't have to get I can get you the information from that. My sister-in-law actually texted it to me.
If you are a relative, and if you're a designated relative, I only know this because my father-in-law is in a long-term care facility, albeit he's in Illinois. There are if there is information that's sent to those family members that have been, like my husband doesn't get this information, but his sister, who is the power of attorney and medical power of attorney, she does, and she can log into those things. That is not something that we will be able to.
Well, you don't have to log in, so you just put, it's just a different URL. That's the
Okay.
ironic part. Literally, I just don't have it with me, so.
If you could send that to me, that would be helpful.
I will.
Also for us, but we can't get that information. All we get is what we see on the state of Ohio's Department of Health's
Great.
website that tracks it pretty well. But it does rely on the organizations being truthful with the tracking. And I have no reason to doubt that a nursing home, I don't have a reason, I know of a reason to doubt that a nursing home or long-term care facility wouldn't be truthful. They have all kinds of licenses at stake.
Right.
It wouldn't behoove them to not be truthful,
Right.
so.
Well, and I guess my concern, and it kind of alludes to what the mayor said about testing, is I personally needed a test, and I tried CVS, Rite Aid, Access Point, I tried all of them, and there wasn't a test to be had for at least 6 days.
We've been running into that because of the surge. Our employees are getting in pretty quickly, within a 3 to 5 day window, if not sooner. I don't know what to tell you, I think.
No, I know, I'm just curious if they had been, if Sue had, I was just asking because, I just wondered if it was causing a hardship for any of our, staff as far as if we were transporting more people to the hospital because of Pleasant View. And I do know that I believe it started to infiltrate the assisted living now as well. There was some statistics on there about that as well.
All right, very good. I just wanted to interject about the website and about the numbers.
Ms. Angela?
Yes, that was Pleasant View, it's not current, but they have 90-some people right now. My mother-in-law tested positive about 3 weeks ago. So I would imagine that she is not positive now. So I think that's accumulative. I think that's everybody that had at one time had the COVID. I know there's been some deaths. My husband, I have my mother-in-law there, and he's they call him, pretty regularly, and they are very short on staff, and they're doing the best that they can. My mother-in-law lost her phone, took them 3 days to find it, they did find it, now she lost her teeth, they can't find her teeth now. But you have to realize that they move these people all around, and some of them just can't get the grip of what's going on. My mother-in-law had nothing but a small fever for a day or two, and that was it. So I don't, those numbers are probably cumulative.
I'm thinking,
They-
I don't know.
They are,
Because she doesn't have COVID now, but they won't move her back to where she was because they don't want to go down the hallways or anything of that sort. So she misses her roommate a lot, so.
I know it's been about 5 weeks, I think, since the first cases hit, at least because my husband is also, power of attorney for health. He has access to her medical care. And, so we did receive a phone call that cases were hitting. And then, if you look from Thanksgiving to now, it has increased by at least 60 cases, based on their website. So I was just concerned that maybe it was, posing a problem for our area hospital or, because we really haven't been able to acquire a lot of information, so.
And as I mentioned last week, getting the test, in the springtime, we couldn't find tests. And now, probably, I'd say June, July, August, September, there were plenty of tests. You can get in within a few hours or days. Now the tests are a big issue. And the other issue after that is capacity to run the test. So getting the results in labs. So that's why there's such an increase in some of the numbers, is that there's a backlog of tests. After that, we look at the medical care and the staff and the capacity of the hospitals. So there's been a lot of talk nationwide about staff bridging, they call it. So if you're an RN in this facility, you meet the same qualifications to work in another facility. And so working between those institutions of who's short on staff. This is a serious thing. And, if you look out the window and you see people walking around the lake and having a nice time, and that's great. You may not realize how serious this is. We get weekly calls or updates from the White House all the way down to the county level. So governor's office, emergency management, health departments, all those. So there's a ton of information flying around. It's been like this since February, March, and some of that information changes on a daily basis. So we're trying to operate the city in all the other capacity and everything else we're doing. To have this take up a very large chunk of our time is more than overwhelming. But I was going to say this in my comments later. I had heard some rumors about some nursing and assisted living facilities in Marvin. And when I was talking to some other community leaders, they kind of said, well, this is just a rumor. I don't want my name attached to it until we can figure it out. If you hear a rumor, I'd rather get the rumor solidified with answers. Either fact check it, make sure it's true or it's not true, and move on from there. So if you hear of any rumors, don't feel bad about contacting me or anyone else. Let's either confirm those rumors and move on from there and figure out how we're going to deal with it, or put the rumor to rest. So if you hear anything, feel free to please reach out anytime.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I just one more thing, it's definitely not a rumor. I mean, it's.
No, I'm not saying that's a rumor.
So, I just want to.
There are other things associated with it, and I'm not saying it was pleasant to do that I was talking about, but if you hear of a rumor or hear of anything, contact us. Don't feel bad about doing it. That was the point.
That being said, I mean, it's a big epidemic, we should all be cautious. Right now, one of the Norton fire chiefs, like, last name is Schultz, he has COVID-19, so we say prayers for him too. I mean, a lot of firemen and paramedics are going through it, and police officers, and you gotta follow through with it and take precaution. And, that, anything else? Motion to adjourn, please.
I'll second that.
Alright, and we are adjourned at 6:29. As long as we're not that, right here.
Thank you very much. Next up is planning, annexation, and codes with Mrs. Angelo.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is Monday, December 7th at 6:30 PM. We're at the Active Adult Center. This is planning, annexation, and code. All members are present along with council and guests as noted on my sheet. Copies of discussion. We have current legislation, Resolution 147, 2020, titled Amending Barberton Codified Ordinances 670, Chapter 1422 and Chapter 1444. That is the grass, the trees, grass, and weeds trimming. And we went through this discussion last week, and I read off all of the increases all the proposals that were the increases. And I haven't received anything from any council. I know Mr. Greer and Mr. Heidi had sent something over, and was there any other, Mayor, did you have anybody else, call?
No, just Mr. Heidi and Mr. Bird.
That was it,
I
okay.
had comments from the public I can talk about later during my open office hours.
Okay, all right. So, we're gonna have 3 readings on this, so, next week will be the 2nd reading, and then the 21st of December will be the 3rd reading. Now, does anybody on my committee want to open this up for any discussion on these proposed amounts? Okay, Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I was thinking about this and I was looking back at it. Have we received any more information on the return on these fees already? What is the rate of return, I guess, when we charge somebody, when we assess?
I don't have.
I know we asked for it. Or at least it came up, the topic came up.
Yeah. Right.
So
Do you have any idea what the,
I'm not
return is on?
sure. It's kind of two different things, because that return could happen, not the next tax cycle, but could happen down the road, so I'm not sure if, Mr. Flaker has that or not. But then again, like I said, the
Right.
return can happen, but it could happen a year or two down the road.
And that was something I think was important to understand. With raising these fees, I guess the question is if we have a low rate of return, what good does raising the fees do? I know it will give us more money for that we do get, and we need it, but it was kind of a two-part thing. Also, I was wondering how many of these properties that we typically see, and I apologize for not, this is just something I was reading this earlier, are bank owned.
or bank owned?
Yeah. Like,
I believe the ones that are
foreclosure.
banked, they're owned by the bank, they have a $10,000 surety bond, so that comes from that. You know, when we cut the grass,
Almost immediately.
Yes.
From the bank bond versus putting assessing it to the taxes.
okay, I did forget
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah,
And the reason I asked that question is when a house forecloses and we've all seen it, houses sit for years because a bank owns it. They can't turn it because it's not worth anything anymore. And it's really just whenever it comes to someone's desk that can sign and get it either tore down, cleaned out, and then you start to see it move after the legal process. My concern would be with these prices, and not that I don't agree with them, it's just my concern. If we have bank-owned houses that have a high assessment to them, that we went and mowed the grass and a bank owns it. Now, we do get the $10,000 thing, so, but I was just providing a little context on why I was asking a question. That the bank would then forward that cost to them to flip the property, to sell it. So we would have property sitting around assessed, but I guess it would make sense if we did get.
yeah, we get, if it's a bank house and it's bank owned, and I used a couple houses that was in my area that were vacant, and one was owned from the Bank of California, because these banks they buy different mortgages, you know, they'll buy like a whole bank's mortgage, and then they sit on it, and it can take them a year. You know, it was brought to their attention, the one in California, they weren't even aware of it at that point. So, they had the 10,000 surety bond, so the grass was being cut, but the weeds around the house wasn't. So when a picture was sent to them with that house, within that year, that house got sold right away. And there was another one too that sat, it had to go through probate court. And sometimes probate court can be 6 months to 2 or 3 years that house will sit before the court then awards the house. Well, that's what happened to this house, and then it ended up going to one of the children or grandchildren or something of that sort, and she turned it over to a realtor, and it sat for a while. It did have the 10,000 surety bond, and it finally sold. So it's the process, the way the banks handle this, because they can have that mortgage for a year, and that mortgage can be sold to another bank for another year. And so planning, you have to, you know, try to find out who has this and who doesn't have this, who owns it, and that type of thing. Unfortunately, I wish that process would be a little bit quicker, but it's just not, because there's been so many homes that people have walked away from and left empty. The thing that I'd have to say about the grass cutting is that, first of all, I'm sure our city employees, I'm sure they're not saying, you know, your job is to cut grass. They know their jobs. They know that they work in the water department, the utilities department, the street department, and everything of that sort. But when our parks are left behind because we just don't have the people to cut the parks, they're out cutting private property, where that person can hire a landscaper, I'm just gonna say $50. You know, it'd be so much cheaper, but it's easier for, you know, after 8 inches, we have to go out and cut it, and then we put on the property taxes. Could take a year and a half before we get our money, and you're right, Mr. Greer, we don't know what the return is off of that. The thing is that we have to stop being the people's bank. Because we pay the employee, you know, his wages, you know, all the employees, and they might have cut that 2 or 3 times. We have to stop, we have to start letting the resident or the landlord take responsibility. Because that's not really what we do. We really don't go out and cut grass unless it's city-owned property. So I don't, it looks like it's high, and maybe that will open up some eyes for other landlords or homeowners to say, oh my gosh, you know, I'm gonna hire somebody for $50 a cut to do it instead of this. I just feel that it's really gotten out of control, and maybe this, we'll have to, you know, look at figures and everything next year to see what we have and see if it's been beneficial, you know, by raising that, plus the equipment that we really don't have. I know the parks don't have the equipment, so, in the street department. So I don't think that's too far-fetched. I really don't. I think that's, we just have to wait and see, you know, review it in a year and see what we have. But it takes so long for us to get our money back, and we don't even, you know, we can't even say what the return is. It takes a year and a half to get our money back.
I guess another concern that I have with this is, I like it, I like the accountability aspect of it, but this is just a little, big concern. I'm concerned that we could assess these properties into just being no man's land, and no one wants to touch them because the property value or taxes are so high. They're just gonna sit there, the house is gonna, until we have to put money from our demo program to raise them, and then it sits there again, and then it's developed, you know, it can be developed on, but yet the property taxes are again high. They've been assessed so high that, you know, the piece of property that we would have normally sold for $5,000 had to go for higher, so we lose that appeal after that long road, and it's a long process, I understand it. And that's the only thing, you know, I get it that we want to open the eyes of and get the attention. And if we never get it back, then the money's going, the price tag's being put on something, and it's being put on the property. And if it does come to us at one day, or it is developed, becomes something that can be developed, I'm worried that the price tag and the taxes, the property value that we've inflated by doing this, would be so high that we'd just be stuck with property and no money. And that's one of my concerns.
You know, you don't want to be next to a house that has, you know, their grass is 12 inches high, you know. First thing you're gonna do, you're gonna call the mayor's office and scream, you want that grass cut. So then that's what we do. You know, we want to, you know, keep the residents happy, but then yet we have to be able to, you know, get our money back for this. Mr. Knighty?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gary, when you say the price tag is too high, right now, we're paying it.
Yes.
We're paying the price tag. And I'm sorry for certain lots that go into disarray, but if our men are taking time to do private lots, if it takes them 1 hour, that's 1 hour away from filling a pothole, from cutting anything else, then God forbid something happens at 5 o'clock in a water main break and he's already hit 40 hours and he's the only one that can come in. Now we're paying time and a half. So essentially for a private lot, we're paying 2.5 times our wage just to do someone's property that doesn't do it, doesn't know about it, doesn't care about it, or just plain out neglects it. And whether we end up collecting it 1 year, 2 years, 3 years away, I think is almost immaterial because we're spending that money right now. And we can't get out of spending that money right now. So the price tag should be high because we're the ones paying. So that's all I have for
No,
that.
I completely agree with that. I think that is a valid point. All this is all monopoly money to me, except for the money we're spending.
Yeah, exactly.
But it becomes real money when we need to offload that property to do something with it, and the taxes are so high on it that nobody's gonna buy it. So we're never ever gonna recoup that money. And that's just where I know, I've seen property where the taxes were white in order to sell it. We made no money off of that, and granted, that's a long-term development thing. So that was just where
Mrs. Fry, did you have something?
I wanted to ask if, possibly Bill or somebody in the room knows how long the county, the fiscal office, will allow you to not pay your taxes and have it keep mounting and mounting and mounting up before they foreclose. Is there a certain level?
I'm not sure if there's a rule of thumb with that. This is, we're still kind of coming off of, even though home building, home purchasing is kind of taking off and has been for the last couple of years. There's still a lot of remnants of the housing bust from 07, 08, 09. So, long answer, short answer is, I don't know if there's a rule of thumb. We can initiate a foreclosure as well. And there's times where, if the bank owns it, then we're getting paid right now. We're not gonna pay the taxes that haven't been paid, just our assessments. And so those get wiped, we foreclose on it, we get the property, tear it down, sell it. If it's not bank owned, then, yeah, it's our money, and we get it wiped away. We get shorted by the county because they make their money. And so long-term development, but that long-term development can be very long, especially with the housing bust, because everyone was dealing with that. And this isn't an issue unique to Barton. But if you collect $200 over here, and then you don't collect on the next few properties, but you collect $800 over here, and not on the next few, you've made more money. See what I'm saying? So we want to, as Mr. Tracy said the other week, de-incentivize people from having us cut their grass.
I wanted to add on to that. I think that, we should explore different ways to collect the money as well. And, there are communities across the United States that you can get jail time for not mowing your grass. And I don't think we're out of line if all of us got that email from Bill telling about a property that, neglected their property, and they came before a judge, and I think, if my memory serves me right, it was a year or two long, the ordeal.
The whole ordeal was.
We ended up with $25. So we have to do something, because they're all playing the game, and if we're ever going to get anywhere in this city, we have to start clamping down. You can go into a lot of different communities, and you just wonder how they even do it. Like, say, go to Medina. You don't see the mess that you see here. I mean, there has to be a way that we can stop the fact that people won't even maintain their property, because nobody wants to move there if that's the case. So I don't think that is out of line at all. I would just like to know of a way that we could legally collect the money instead of putting it on the property taxes.
Mr. Short, Mr. Bridges?
I want to piggyback off something Carol says. That's our problem. That's our big problem.
That's our biggest problem.
We don't have any teeth. I could take you to properties right now that are rentals, and we don't even get the rental fee because the person that owns it, well, my son, he stays there. He does that. He bought it. He's buying it from me. We losing both ends. Plus, the property is junk. Debris all over the place. The planning, the inspectors, they go out there. They do what they're supposed to do. We're on the phone sometimes, and I can see them, and we're talking. They cite these people. We don't get nothing from them. Nothing. That's our biggest problem. And then the taxes, like you said, on the houses and stuff, the taxes owed more on taxes than the property is worth.
Yep. Right.
So it's, yeah, you're just losing all the way around. So you gotta do something. And I've been to towns, I used to go fishing up Sandusky. I go to this little town of Fremont. Some days it was bad fishing. I just ride around neighborhoods. I look at these little houses that wasn't worth a lot of money, but the yards were upkeep and clean and everything. I'm like, why can't we do this?
Right.
Something is wrong.
We can't do it because we're allowing it to go on.
I know.
So something has to be done. It's our fault as well as the residents.
Mrs. DeBetti?
Thank you. You're absolutely right, Carol. I'm of the belief that we absolutely have to do something, but I don't necessarily think that raising the fee is the issue. Because I don't think if it's $400 or $800, I don't think for the most part, I would be really interested, as I asked 2 weeks ago, for the amount of collection or the percentage that we actually collect. So again, it's about enforcement of the grass cutting. And alluding to what the mayor said about the housing bust of 2008 and 2009, that's exactly what I think Mr. Greer is kind of alluding to when he indicates that the properties are gonna be, I mean, let's say for the summer, let's face it, if someone doesn't cut their grass and it's 3 feet tall, are they really gonna pay $800 to have their grass cut ever? Probably not. There's something else going on there if the grass is 3 feet tall. So, in my opinion. So, I guess what I think Mr. Greer was trying to say is that if you assess the property for 4 times for the series of grass cuttings, $3,200. And that takes a couple of years. You do it for 2 years. You're into $6,500. We don't, it takes a long time for the sheriff to post a sheriff sale. And then, we've remodeled houses and we've bought them that way. And if you don't bid high enough with the bank, then they go back up. I think what we could end up with is not a problem now, but a long-term housing problem in the city by raising, because we are going to be putting more money on taxes that aren't going to be paid. That's just my opinion. Am I opposed to $800? Absolutely not. I would like to charge them $8,000 for not cutting the grass. I just think that if we look at the big picture, if we don't know the rate that we're collecting, and we stand to put even more back taxes on properties that may not.
But so if you can't knock on the door and get the money, if you send a certified letter and you don't get the money, our hands are tied, other than being allowed to put that assessment on their property taxes and hope that maybe, if you put 20 on, hope that we get maybe 10 back. Because we still have to pay our employee, and that still comes out of the general fund, so we still have to pay the employee for doing the work. I don't know how else, I can't vision legally what else we can do. I mean, you can send as many certified letters out that you want, and like the one that Mayor had sent us, they fought it in court, and, the judge slapped them $25. I've seen $10. I've seen that they put in 30 hours of work in the building department, and they got slapped with a $10 fine. Is that justice? According to the judge, that's all that person can pay, but we've cut the grass for a year. So what is the answer? Mr. Heidi? Do you have
Thank
an
you.
answer?
No, I don't have the answer. I wish I did. But, to Mrs. DeBevick's point there, if somebody's not paying their taxes, and we can't collect on it, what's the difference if we charge them $400 or $800? They're not paying.
They're not paying.
They're not gonna pay no matter what. And no matter what happens, if it goes to a sheriff's sale, if it sells for pennies on the dollar, what we can't be is the creditor last in line in the credit. And that's what's happening, is we're the ones issuing the credit card, but when bankruptcy happens, somehow we're the ones last in line, even though we own the debt. And to me, if it goes from 400 to 800 and we collect 50%, and we're only collecting 50%, well, then we're still coming out ahead because we've doubled it. But again, we can't be the last in line to collect when we were the first ones to pay.
Well, you would be the last one.
And that's the problem, and that's why we
Even if
need.
you assess it to your yard, so.
Right, and that's what the problem is we're last in line, even though we're the ones putting in the work.
I'm sorry. No,
No, I'm done.
Go ahead, Carol.
I wanted to ask you, Billy, you said a minute ago, a couple minutes ago, you said we could foreclose on properties. What's the process? Because that's what we gotta start doing,
Well, we have been,
okay?
and.
And therefore, you don't let it get so out of hand that you can't sell it.
That you can't sell it.
But then there is a real fear in the homeowner. You know, if these people can be scared, I don't think they can. But, the people that keep breaking the rules, I don't think that,
I honestly don't think that the people that are letting their grass get 3 high, I honestly don't think people are living there. In my opinion.
no, I have people in
I
my
mean, the
work.
bulk of them,
I beg your pardon?
the bulk of these properties are vacant, if I'm not mistaken. I drive around and when I see a lot of them, there's nothing going on in that property there.
Well, I get calls from people that do live in the properties and they would like them to be cleaned up and we, tag them and end up sending somebody out, but there's people living there. It's not like it's abandoned homes. There are people that actually live like that. And we have a lot of problems in addition to the grass. How about the people that use their front porch as a storage shed? And that goes on all over, and then puts up tarps like it's an enclosed porch. I mean, we just let way too much get by.
So whose fault is that?
I beg your pardon?
Whose
Well,
fault is
if there's a buildup, if
This
there's a
is city's fault for, I think,
Which department?
I beg your pardon?
Which department?
It's not pointing the finger at anybody, it's over the accumulation of time. This,
some of this is just long overdue.
it is.
It is, it's up to us to do it if we wanna make a change.
And some of the other, maybe other council that wasn't top of their priority, I think that should be ours here, because we always talk openly and be able to say what we want. And some of these, if they're rental, Mayor, if they're rental, we charge that same amount if it's rental. Now, does the homeowner, do they get certification that we cut their grass?
Same process, yes.
Okay, same process. And you give them so many days to pay it, or it just automatically goes on property taxes?
So many days to cut it, if we cut it, I believe they can't pay it. Or we then we assess it if they don't pay.
Okay, maybe instead of assessing it, send it to court for $25, but I mean, maybe if that could be the reputation that homeowner did nothing and we cut that grass, that we're gonna collect our money through the courts.
So
I don't know.
there's been a lot of talk in the past about a housing court.
Uh-huh.
And most of our property maintenance violations in general don't make it that far.
Yeah,
But they get strung out for a long time. So how do we expedite that? So I've been talking to the courts for quite a while about, do we use the magistrate that's there? Is there enough time in his schedule for 1 day a week or 1 day a month that is dedicated just for property maintenance or just for rentals? So, like I said earlier, COVID has thrown a wrench into everyone's schedule, so it just lengthens the amount of time we have to really get to the meat and potatoes of things. So still having those discussions with the courts, and that's something that we'd love to shore up and see if there's a way to do that. Tenants of rental units have rules and laws that protect them,
right.
so do landlords, and so we have to kind of balance between the two. So, and if you look at, I appreciate you saying, there's no pointing the finger. There's been an issue here with not replacing employees. Our street department at one time had, close with the signal and the paint, over 40 people. Building department had more people. It's hard to get people with certain qualifications over the years. There's been a lot of factors, but we're here now. We can make a difference. And,
Yes, I have to agree with the mayor on that, so, well, then, if there's anything will be changed with this, we'll go to the next one, because I know that's gonna take a lot of time too, which is, draft resolution 148, 2020, and that's the rental registration. Where do I start? I received this from Mr. Greer and Mr. Heidig, and they were looking at H on the ordinance. to change that to, the way it reads is that if you are current, at a rate of $20, and that's the way it read, that you will, in next year, 2021, stay that $20 status. If you have a violation within that year, and that starts after this starts after March 31st, then you can go up to that $100 rate. And what was presented to me was, to increase that $20 to $40. And I do have a letter from Mr. Chuck Fowler, who, his rentals are he does take care of them. He does, that is his business, so he really takes care of his business. I had suggested to Mr. Greer and Mr. Heidi that, this registration program hasn't been changed since 2009. 11 years, it hasn't been changed. And I started thinking about this before I came, that maybe we should do a 3-year. And that's just open for discussion. 2021 will be $100, 2022 would be $125, and then $150. That gives us, out of the COVID area, and maybe everybody getting up on their feet, there was a moratorium that you could evict, renters. So the landlords, if they had a mortgage on that house or didn't, they felt that pinch on, not collecting any rent, and it could have been for 6 months, that, I'm not quite sure when that moratorium went on. I think April or June or something of that sort. And the $20 fee, I would too like to see 2021, $20, and then the next year, $40, and maybe the next year, $50 or $60. You have to stop and think, $20 is 2 cups of coffee and 2 hamburgers at McDonald's at $20. And so I can see awarding, like Mr. Fowler and some of the other landlords that take pride in their property and take care of their property. But $20 isn't even an hourly fee for one of our employees. So that's something I'd like to go ahead and open up. Mr. Greer and Mr. Heidi can talk about their change that they'd like to see in that section H. Yes.
Just one thing, that $20 didn't start out at $20. It started out at $40, if I'm correct.
Right,
And
right.
then if you went for a year or something, it's not down to $20.
That's exactly it. Right now, as it stands, it's $40 a year. And if you're in good standing the next year, you had no violations on that piece of property, then it went to $20. That was like, thank you so much for taking care of your property. We're going to only charge you $20.
Now, if there is a violation,
Then it goes back to the
Okay.
$40.
wouldn't there be a chance for the guy to fix it up? In other words, you found a violation, you say, okay, I'm gonna slap this $100 on you. Can't you give the person 30 days or something to fix it up? Or you just gonna do it right away?
I don't know.
In other words, I think the person should be allowed to comply.
Because that's the goal.
Yes, yes, the goal is comply. Okay, if you come by and said, okay, I'm gonna charge you $100 because you need a new roof or your chimney's falling off. Wait a minute, I got a guy that's come over next couple of days, gonna fix it. So, and then I'll be back in compliance. I think that's what you want, am I correct?
Right. I mean, yes, we do, but I mean, if I had a rental and I had violations, then I'm gonna be charged $100. If I want to not be charged $100, then, according to the registration, resolution, which they do give, and they pay that, that they would then know that I better keep my property up. So, and I'm sure if they would, I don't know what the procedures of the building department, but I'm sure if they have a violation, they do give them some time to, to get that fixed, but that still is a violation.
Right.
Yes, Mr. Heidi.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify what Justin and I worked on here, what I typed up. It wasn't in the ordinance per se. We did email with the mayor and he did provide us answers. This is pretty much the same thing that the mayor answered us with, only the reason we typed it up is because it wasn't in black and white. But this was, we did verify with the mayor because we did get some questions about landlords placing their properties in trusts. How does that work, and when does the rate actually change? And that's why we wrote this up, because it was, I liked the mayor's answers. The only thing I had a problem with is it wasn't in here. And that's the only reason we typed this up here. But this does follow what the mayor responded to us with. That's why we actually have that here.
Did everybody get that response from the mayor?
Could that be sent to me as well?
I had it. I just-
Yeah, he's got a copy of that. But that's, just to clarify, that was just because when we were speaking, it was, well, we don't see it in here and,
Right,
I like things in black and white.
thank you for doing that, you and Justin, appreciate that.
But I do agree with Mr. Griffin that there should be, a grace period, because like he said, if your chimney's falling over and you've already made the call and the inspector comes one day,
Well, and I
the
think.
next day the guy's scheduled to be there.
I think you do take that into consideration, yes.
We do.
Given
I mean,
that.
if you own a property and you don't go there every day, and I throw a bag of trash in the front yard, we give enough time for people to fix things, and, we don't cite people in the winter time for chip paint, because you can't paint in the winter time.
Mhm.
So we work, the goal is to fix the house up and to make it look good. That's the goal. So we give people enough time to work. It's the people that don't call us, that don't contact us, that don't work with us, we never hear from. But people will come in all the time and go, hey, I've got this property, got these issues. You cited me, gave me 2 weeks to do it. My contractor's behind, it's gonna take me 3 weeks, 4 weeks. We work with the public very well.
Right. Because if they're inspecting that and they see that, they'll send them a letter. And if they fix it, then that's not a violation, but you have to give them ample time to fix anything, anybody, can do that, yes, Mrs. Fry.
I wanted to address what you had said about it would be $100 one year, then 120, and then 150. I think perhaps, but I mean, this is open for discussion, everybody can chime in and say what they think. But I think that possibly we should keep the ordinance for, 1 to 3 years, and then revisit it and see how things are going, and then increase it. And nobody should be upset about rates being increased, because we all face that on a daily basis. When you go to get your license plates for your car, they don't ask you if it's okay that they're gonna charge you, $20 more this year. It's just the rules, and that's how the businesses run, and, they find it necessary to charge you more for whatever, yeah. So, I think possibly with this first piece of legislation, we should just mention in there that this will be revisited, every 2 years or whatever. And then they'll, have a heads up that it is going to be revisited, and things don't usually go down. So, instead of mapping it out ahead of time, just to see, what kind of revenue we bring in, what we can do with the rental registration revenue. And, if people are complying better and that sort of thing. But that's just a suggestion. I just wanted to comment.
Now, I don't have a problem with reviewing it, I just don't want this one to go for 11 years. So that's whatever, 1 year, 2 years to review it, I don't think that's a problem. This is something, Mr. Hyde?
Thank you. I do believe the goal of this should be within a certain time frame to start getting more uniformity with the fees. Anytime you do an overhaul, and I'll break the coin with the word, it sucks when you do an overhaul. So it's gonna be wordy, it's gonna be, this is here, this is here, this is here, but that's what happens when something sits for 11 years. In 3 years, once we see how this works there, I think that we could work closer to a more uniform fee schedule. But anytime you take something that's been the same for 11 years, you're gonna encounter goofy steps like this, you gave this person that, you gave this person this time frame. But in all honesty, that money for that fee does have to go up. In 11 years, prices have gone up on things. And the way I look at it is rentals, they do serve a purpose, but they are a business. And they're not being inspected like they should. And I'm gonna use a personal example here. Every year, I have to pay the health department to come inspect my restaurant. Mr. Jaber, you have to pay how many licenses are on your wall just to have inspections. Renting a house or a unit, you don't have to go get a business license. You don't have to do certain things. They're the most unregulated, non-fee paying business. And yes, it's a dwelling, but when you break it down, they're selling a widget, just as I'm selling a widget, just as Mr. Jaber's selling a widget, Mr. Greger's selling a widget, whether it's his services or software program. But that's the rules of the game. You're gonna have to pay to play. And if you're not going to, then we have to send somebody in to inspect it, because again, you could buy a house tomorrow and just sign a contract with me and says, here, you're renting. What do you have to pay for it? Every other business in America has to pay something. Now, what do they get out of it? They get inspections, they get the community value of it because they get cited, they have to fix things up. So it all equals out. But again, it's gonna be worthy, and I do see that. But in 3 years, if we revisit this, I think that's gonna be when we're more close to a uniform set schedule and everybody have time to get used to it, get broken in, and you have the best point, let's not let it go 11 years again.
Well, I know and it used to be if you, had a bunch of cars that you were selling on your own property, that if there were so many cars, you had to get a state license for that.
Right.
Is that the same with rentals? Is there a certain amount, like if you had 50 rentals, do you have to get a state license as a business or be inspected, anything of that sort? No?
I don't know.
Because it is a business. If you have more than 2 or 3, I would say that's a business, But that's a good point, Mr. Heidi, because they don't have to be state regulated or anything of that sort.
You should have
Yes.
the safety of the people that you're renting to. You could have floorboards that are unsafe for children to be walking on, falling through the basement.
For the electrical that catches on fire and that type of thing.
Mrs. Angelo?
Yes.
Just got 2 more questions. How do we compare the rental fees with other cities that are compatible comparison to Barberton? How would that?
I would have to say we're probably the lowest.
Okay.
I've not done any research on that. I'm just taking into account that if this ordinance is 11 years old and it was $40, so it's
I agree with
$100.
that.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the other communities are charging.
Now, there's another question too, as far as, it's a business, true enough. And you can only get so much rent from a Barberton. That's plain and simple. So there's a limit, like HUD or, I deal with them. They'll tell me how much they'll pay for the locations is at. In other words, if you take the same house, no matter how good it is, and you put it in the Falls or Fairlawn, you'll get more. But you can take that same house and you put it in Barberton, then you're not gonna get it.
I think because the property taxes, we're one of the, I think Mr. Heidi had
Well,
brought that.
they'll go with
before.
the average. They'll go with the average in your, same way with your house.
Mhm.
If, you get your house appraised, if there's nothing around, they'll go within, a mile and a half or something to find something that's compatible with your house. and
Right.
That increases your value. But in other words, you could build a rental for whatever and say you want this, that doesn't mean you're gonna get it.
Right.
Because
Right.
it's only, you could say how nice it is, blah, 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 you're not gonna get it because of the location is everything.
Mayor, do you know, comparable other communities,
I don't have-
if they even have a rental registration or what they're?
I don't have comparables with me.
I have some here, and so there's communities that don't even have rental registration. Our neighbor doesn't, Norton doesn't have anything. They're saying what we're doing and they're interested in doing something in the same way. But then there's places on the other end, like Beechwood, where they charge $500. So $100 for Barberton does not seem,
Out of reach.
out of reach at all. Especially when you consider, like, we need to keep in mind that we need to do what's right for us. How do we sustain a program in Barberton? Is $100 a number that gets us, $250,000 in revenue for the year total, where we can hire 3 people out of that and get vehicles and do the inspections and scheduling? And I mean, there's a lot that goes on, the software, the hardware, the equipment, when you do this stuff. So you want to keep it competitive, obviously, with other municipalities, townships, and villages and such, but we also need to keep in mind, like, what do we need to run a program that's effective?
If you happen to look at Akron, they're just like 150 a unit.
I mean, here I have a couple of them. I have Bedford they break it down by the number of units. Euclid's $200. Painesville breaks it down by units or how many units you have, but they also have $100 one for transfer fees. Everyone has a little bit difference as far as their fees for transferring and registration and different things. So Pepper Pike is $100. These are just ones I looked up on LawWriter on the internet. And then Brook Park is $100 or $300 if you're late. So I mean, I think one of the ones we had was Middleburg Heights, and they were 150, I believe. Was it 150?
That was 150 per unit. Okay. Mrs. Devitt?
Thank you. So I think that, and I don't know, I haven't spoken with any landlords or anything, but I'm of the opinion that as long as we are, so up until now, it's kind of been in limbo what we've really done with the rental registration money. But I think what Mr. Tracy has laid out for us about hiring inspectors that will be totally dedicated to that. No,
They
that's
will not
not,
be totally dedicated to that.
they will not be.
No, that's where we went, 2 weeks ago, we talked about doing the zones.
Well,
They'll be
that's right.
dedicated to their zone, so they will be doing rental
Okay, but not
registration.
just to rental, not just to rental.
No, because what you run into is where I mentioned about
Okay, I misunderstood.
having
that.
3 different people on the same street for 3 different things. It doesn't
No,
make any
I
sense.
understand, I
But what it is the way it's structured now, it may bring in like 80,000 a year. It's not enough to do all, 2,500 units in the city. I mean, you can't schedule inspections for all those places, and you can't get the equipment. There's not enough there.
So I guess my point is if we have something concrete as far as a plan and we execute the plan, obviously the plan is to, if executed properly, will increase these landlords' property value. Because it's gonna increase all of our property values, because it's gonna improve the city. So I think if anybody's getting grief with landlords, I think it's because we haven't shown that the money that we began collecting in 2009 has actually produced that result. So if we want to keep everybody comfortable with paying, I think we have to provide result. And, that's my opinion.
Councilwoman Angela.
Yes.
So as I stated a couple weeks ago, the reason this is coming up now, when I first started as mayor, we had an issue with just having vehicles for the inspectors. And so then you got into a case where there was, at one point, three employees, a clerk and 2 inspectors to do the entire city, plus the gas line replacement projects and all of that. Now we're at a little fuller staff, with the addition of Mr. Howell with the CBO as a CBO. We're not exactly where we need to be with the fleet, but we're way better off than we were. And if this passes, as presented or with a higher rate, as long as it can provide the necessary resources, as I mentioned, within the first 90 days, I'll have a plan to council and the public on how we're gonna enhance and empower and rebuild the neighborhoods, and this is gonna be the plan putting it together. and the usage. So there's a splitting those costs, so you have someone for every kind of neighborhood or zone. So they can do grass, owner occupied, rental, if there's a faded street sign, let us know. If a hydrant needs fixed, whatever it is. But also work on the positive side. If there's a home that needs some help, there's a lot of volunteer groups that can go out and get that paint the garage, whatever it is, rake the leaves. So it's going to be an all-encompassing redevelopment of neighborhoods, a program that we will institute. And I'll have that to council and the public within the first 90 days.
Mrs. Angelo, if I may. I just want to say, so given what you said, what is the amount that we do need to be effective? Because I think that's how we determine what the rate is.
So, and that's what we've done. So it was about $150,000 expected. If this rate increase as proposed goes through, should be able to hire 2 more employees. And so that would really help us increase our effectiveness in the neighborhoods and put this program into full use. If it's higher, obviously, because the money's earmarked per the legislation that was passed in 09 of how it can be used, so it won't get lost in the general fund. If it's higher, then obviously there's more things we can do.
So I guess what it comes down to as city council collectively, if we want to see an effective change, we need to at least structure it to earn $150,000 a year. And I guess what the question becomes is, how are we gonna do that? What,
Right,
Yeah, go ahead, I've been talking so much. I was wondering, when people register their properties for rent, there's been a lot of talk about inspections. Do we, at the time of them registering, go out and inspect the properties to make sure that they are good properties and don't have any issues that might not even be visible to the public, like internal issues within the apartments? Do we do that?
No, and as the rental units, or the rental registration is all due by the 1st of January.
Okay,
So the part of this proposal is that they would have until March to pay this. So it gives some time and some flexibility for our staff to be able to do some of these inspections.
I think that,
Also, the inspections, because the payments are due all at the same time, the way it's written is there's an inspection every 2 years. So it's not right when you register. It's within a 2-year period that you get an inspection on your property. You couldn't possibly inspect all the properties within a 2-month period when people send the checks in. It's not possible. I mean, even fitting them over 2 years is a difficult prospect, but that is at least achievable.
well, I'm saying that right now we have existing rentals, but going forward, perhaps, when somebody wants to register, maybe we should require that the property is inspected. And, as Mr. Heidick was pointing out, he has to pay for inspections. And, if they're only paying $100 and we are going out and inspecting it, that's really cheap. Because then they could say to the people that are gonna rent it, well, the city inspected it and everything passed, or what have you.
I believe the first inspection is built into the registration fee, but if we have to go back, I don't have it in front of me. I think there's an additional fee for us having to go back to check on whether they fixed it, or if they didn't, we have to go back again. There's additional fees for that.
Okay.
But keep in mind too, the runner registration right now, it helps pay for the property maintenance inspectors who still do property maintenance on all the rentals in the city. It's not like it's not utilized. There's still a value to it. If without rental registration, you probably would be minus another employee in the department already.
Thank you. Okay, do we want to revisit this?
I have one more, just to put it out there too, in case anybody didn't know that doesn't utilize rentals. Rental registration fees for landlords, for owners, are tax deductible. So that does come into play there, that is a tool that they can use.
Okay, Mr. Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to double back on that piece of paper I handed everybody in council. And Mayor, there, I have one here for you. Just to kind of explain this a little bit. I had a conversation with a few landlords, and this was just out of the questions that they were asking that I really didn't have the answer for. So units registered, there's a section here, units registered before January 1st, 2019, if the year 2021 completes with no violations, the registration can be earned, or can earn the $20 rate forward. That was to basically the grandfather clause, like if they've owned, that was just clarifying it. But the second part wasn't something that the mayor answered, and this came from a conversation that I had today with the landlord, and he was asking about the grandfather clause, and if he bought the property within 36 months prior to this legislation passing, would he still be in the grandfather clause? And the answer to that is no, because the way the legislation was presented and proposed, it just said the $20 rate. So you would already have to been in good standing to get the. So with talking with Mr. Heidick to write this up, it was kind of like a compromise. To him, I said, no, it's not like that. And he told me that he was a little disappointed in the fact that he got his properties, and he was working on this one piece of legislation. Now you guys are going to change the finish line on me. And I get where he was coming from. So listen, it kind of came to a compromise, and he said, well, could I at least, I just bought a property in November, could I at least be prorated for next year? So the last sentence in this, and this was just a talking point, and it was written out if we wanted to add it to as well. Units registered after January 1st, 2019, the rate for 2021 paid before March 31st shall be 40 with the increase yearly thereafter to 100. What that was prorated. So they would so in this particular case, he paid $40 for the registration fee in November. And then if this passed, he would have to pay an additional $100 come March. With it being so close, and I believe this may have been mentioned in the slide, but it wasn't written down, that if you were that close or within a year, you would be prorated for that following year, and then you would jump up to the final, the $100 as it was proposed. So that was just an explanation for in the context why I put this together. It was kind of like a compromise for the landlords that have already purchased for this year and next year, to be prorated for the next year only. It would only be for 2021.
But if this is a new rental, though, that would be $100.
He paid for the rental.
Just because some of the other rentals are $20, and he bought a new rental, if I'm wrong, please say something. If he bought a new rental in November, and he paid the $40, well, then you're looking at November, December. If he didn't have any violations, then that piece would go down to $20.
No,
Is that right? No.
it would only go down to the 20 if you were in good standing for 3 years according to the old legislation.
Correct.
That's why 2021, since it wouldn't be due until the end of March 31st, you'd have to pay that. That if somebody was 3 months away from reaching that 3-year threshold, it was kind of like, kind of a mulligan for them, so to speak.
And this was kind of confusing. That's why.
Because we don't know if he's in good standing,
Right.
We don't, you're giving him a mulligan, but we don't know if he's in good standing, even though he bought that rental in November. And you're saying by March 31st.
Well, the way it would be now, if you purchased the rental November of this year, paid $40 for 20, and nothing changes here, you would have to pay $40 for 21. I think, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's actually how it was written.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how it is now. So
Okay.
if you bought the rental in November, paid $40 for 2020, you want to prorate that all through 21?
That was a suggestion.
If he were to pay before March 31st, he would only have to pay the 40 for 2021 and then go to 100.
Oh, okay.
It would be prorated, so I think it would be 60, looking at this.
Well,
So it wouldn't
We're
be
basically
prorated.
prorating
It
time,
would be
It would be
prorated.
prorated, it would just pay the same amount for 21.
as long as he paid before March 31st. We're not, it's prorated time,
Yeah.
not money.
And then 22 would go back to the 100.
Correct,
And that's, that,
correct.
yeah.
So that, I mean, council will do what you guys want. That'll offset any kind of guarantees I put together, you know, we'll have to refigure, kind of bring out that number and see what that number is. If we can even pull that out and generate a new kind of engine, when we'll get to that point of having enough funds to hire the 2 additional staff members, if that's what passes. Because I don't know how many rental units are in that situation.
Right, right. Well, thanks, Chair.
Yes, Mr.
Thank you,
Gabbard.
thank you, Chair. Whatever it is, we're behind. It's 2021. I mean, you guys drive around town, it looks terrible. I mean, we gotta get the inspectors going and we're behind. So either way, let's get it done and get forward with it. I think these fees are good. Take Mary and take Mr. Tracy's lead on this one and go with it. We're behind and it's 2021.
And if you recall, in years past, we've done several years where we either put dumpsters in neighborhoods, and that was typically after a flood, but we also spent many weekends where we allowed just dumpsters down the street department. You can come and drop off whatever if you're a resident. Many, I think 3 or 4 years of that. It filled up a ton of dumpsters. And then we had separate tire drop-offs and things like that. And we're still dealing. So we started programs that we could pay for without paying salaries. You know, so it's not like we haven't been doing anything. We've been trying to do kind of alternative things to kind of motivate people to clean up their properties.
Okay,
I just want to say one thing.
okay.
But we can always amend this.
Yes,
You know, I mean, we're doing all this talking, but anything can be amended if we come up with a better idea or whatever. That's all I wanted to say.
right, right. Well, the only thing I have, the question is, did you want to review this after the first year? Do you want to review it every 2 years? Should that be written in the ordinance? Do you want to do it every 2 years?
I would.
Do you think we should? We can have the funds and we can see what they're paying out as, employees and how the program's going, and then we can report, you know, to the public what that is. Do you want to review every 2 years?
I would agree with 2 years.
2 years?
I would too.
Okay.
I'm not even on your committee, but.
And we can send all emails to Mr. Tracy, all negative emails.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think everybody's on this committee, which is great. I appreciate it, and I thank everybody for working, so we will, does everybody agree on this? We're gonna go ahead.
So we would strike out units, well,
Well, I think that, what I think Chairwoman is saying is, we could pass this, because of the language in it, that we essentially give ourselves to March 31st.
Right,
If we could, if we passed it as written, we could give the mayor and give Jeremy and give Greg plenty of time to go over any other numbers that because this just came to us. So
Right.
this would give them time to review more things, that if it falls apart, we still have the plan in place. We could always amend, if we pass this, we could amend it in February if we needed to.
Exactly, we can do that. And we're gonna have 3 readings on it. This is December 21st will be the 3rd reading, the final reading. And it's not emergency, so it doesn't go into effect until 30 days after, which will give, the city to get the information out to the renters and everything by January 21st, and then they know then that they have till March. So they have some work that they have to do, beginning of the year, so they can get this information out. Okay, so we'll review it after 2 years. Any other discussion with that? No? I'm gonna, just miscellaneous discussion, I'm just gonna say the design review board that was scheduled for tomorrow has been canceled, until January. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Mrs. Coburn,
And I'll second.
second. Mr. Ware. We are adjourned at 7:30. Thank you.
Next up is finance and personnel with Mrs. Fry.
All right, tonight is, Monday, December 7th. We are meeting in the Active Adult Center. The time is 7:30. All members of my committee are present, as well as all members of council and guests as noted. We have a couple of pieces of legislation on the agenda for tonight, and we also have the finance report for the month of November. The first piece of legislation that we have is a draft ordinance titled Adopting the RETA Rules and Regulations. This is to adopt the rules and regulations of the Regional Income Tax Agency, also known as RETA. Mr. Flaker has been emailing us, telling us that we were all going to get welcome letters, and also he sent the rules and regulations for RETA. In fact, I think maybe Renee sent those. But I got my letter today, and it seems as though, I haven't been on the website or anything, but it sounds as though this is going to be better for everyone. Everything's supposed to be a lot easier to use, the website and what have you. And you can contact them about any items that you have questions about, and also it will get our tax money to us in a more timely fashion. Mr. Flaker has asked that this be one reading because of the fact that RETA will be taking over in January. As I mentioned, we were emailed a copy of all the rules for RETA. However, it's 67 pages long, so you might want to just save it to your computer and refer to it as you need it. Does anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by Mrs. DeBevick, seconded by Mrs. Angeloff. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. I have a question for Mrs. Fox. The other piece of Renee?
I'm listening.
Okay, the other piece of legislation that you and Jeremy went back and forth on about whether it should be introduced as late tonight, we're gonna wait till next.
Yes, he wants it passed on the 21st, so it's
Okay.
not late.
All right, I just wanted to make sure because I had that note.
And sometimes there's, but it's not gonna happen this year. Sometimes there's some changes at the last minute.
Okay, all right, thank you. The next thing on our agenda is the acceptance of the November 2020 finance report. And since Mr. Flaker is here, if he is ready to give it, we'd like to hear it.
All right, starting with the health insurance fund.
Mr. Flaker, wanna come up here?
Okay.
Thank you.
Starting with the health insurance fund for November 2020. The revenues were $384,000, expenditures $358,000. The unexpended fund balance is $954,000. The net year to date is a positive $296,000. Then moving on to the
income tax fund. The estimate for the month of November was $895,000. Our actuals came in at $1,036,000. Our actuals year to date is $10,538,000, which is over our estimate by about $138,000. And one thing I do want to point out, if you look at the year to date income tax detail next to pending allocations, there is no money in pending allocations anymore. That means CCA is caught up completely. So these are all actual information, all actual from CCA. So that's a good thing. No more estimates from CCA. We did transfer another $1 million to the general fund this past month. We have about $500,000 left to transfer to the general fund for the year. So we're in good shape to be able to meet the transfers to the general fund for this year. I do know in the adjustment ordinance coming to council, there will be a couple other one other transfer that we'll need to do, which I'll discuss it here in a second when I'm going over the statement of fact positions. We have a few funds in the negative. The first fund is Fund 203, the State Highway Improvement Fund. That will get out of the negative once we get the permissive tax, or the gas tax for the month of December. That will get that out of the negative. The next one in the negative is the Sports Complex Operating Fund. That's in the negative due to an encumbrance outstanding. So that's one of the funds that I will be needing to do a transfer from income tax to this fund to get that out of the negative to avoid a citation with the auditors audit season here in a few more months. The next fund in the negative is the FEMA fund, which is for the 14th Street Stormwater program where we're buying houses using FEMA funds. That's reimbursable once we pay out expenses. So once we pay out the expenses, we can get reimbursed by FEMA. The next fund in the negative is the CDBG fund, which, as we discussed before, that's the HUD grant. As we do expenditures out of that, we can get reimbursed from HUD on. And then the final fund in the negative is Fund 517, the Norton Sanitary Sewer Construction Fund. Talking with Denny on this one, we did receive a $50,000 payment from the city of Norton just at the very beginning of December, so it's not showing up on this report. But I will be needing to do a transfer from the sewer fund to the Norton Sanitary Sewer Construction Fund to get that out of the negative to avoid citation with the auditor's office. Then moving on to the previous 3 months' activity. As you can see, the general fund balance has went up again for the third consecutive month. That is due to the additional CARES Act funding that I was able to reclassify some wages and the Summit County Payroll Grant Program, the $500,000 that Summit County gave us for the police department wages. So that's what helped increase that. You'll notice the special revenue funds went down by about $700,000. A lot of that has to deal with the monthly disbursement was up $700,000 from the previous month, and our receipts actually were down as well. The enterprise funds has stayed roughly the same. All other funds has went up about $400,000. It went up. Another thing to point out, in all other funds, we will be closing out the PO for healthcare to Summit County. Since we pay Summit County for healthcare, we'll be able to close that PO out once we make that final payment this year. So that will eliminate another encumbrance out of all other funds. Comparing November 2019 to November 2020, you will notice that the general fund cash balance is up by about $5 million. A lot of that has to deal with the CARES Act being able to use it for fire wages and the Summit County payroll support program that we were able to use for police wages. The special revenue funds is up by about $1.1 million. Enterprise funds is down by about $1.6 million. All other funds, the unencumbered cash balance shows it's down by 1.3 million. As I stated before, a lot of that has to deal with that encumbrance outstanding to the Summit County for our healthcare, that encumbrance. We'll have our final payment this month, we'll have our chargebacks this month, and we'll be able to then close out that PO, which our cash balance is still, overall cash balance in all other funds is down by about 500,000. And a lot of that has to deal with all the retirements that we had this year. So the severance fund will get hit because of that, of the retirements. And that's all I have.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Flaker?
Thank you. So, Fund 517,
Yes.
the negative $427,662. Is that as a result of it needing to be reimbursed to us? Or,
Yeah.
you mentioned that Norton made a
Yeah.
$50,000 payment that isn't reflected here.
Yeah, we have agreements with Summit County and Norton, for these sewer construction projects that are going on in Norton, that they'll, reimburse some of the costs to us. And some of that cost that also needs to be reimbursed is from OPWC and OWDA loans, where we have to pay the expenses out front, and then we can turn in the supporting documents that we paid out the expenses, and then they'll reimburse us for those like engineering costs or the construction costs of the project.
So do you know roughly how much of that is OWPC or is loan money and how much is actually our responsibility? I mean, I know it's always, but that's not a fair question.
I mean, it is our responsibility, however, the majority of these projects in Norton, we have the agreement with Norton where they're reimbursing the city. So we'll pay out money for the OWDA payment or the OPWC payment. However, I turn around and invoice the city of Norton to be reimbursed for that. So, at the end of the day, once all these construction projects are done, and we get reimbursed for what we need to be reimbursed for from either OWDA, OPWC, the city of Norton, Summit County, the Fund 517 at the end of the day, when all these projects are done, it should be a zero balance. It's all set.
Any other questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for the finance report? Motion made by Mr. Hedges and seconded by Mrs. Angela. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It passes. Finance and Personnel has one more item on the agenda for this evening. Well, it's actually two. They are both appointments. The first is appointment to the Barberton Community Foundation, and it is for Mr. Trevor Hunt for a 3-year term. His resume was emailed to all of us to read. And his appointment to the Barberton Community Foundation would be January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2023. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, I know with the Barberton Community Foundation, you're allowed to have a certain number of members that don't live in the city of Barberton. Are we at that threshold, or where are we at with the Barberton Community Foundation? I guess my concern is I'd like to see a Barberton resident hold this seat.
The opening that's open, vacant, is for a seat that's not a Barberton resident.
It's mandated that it doesn't have to be a Barberton resident, or
Or specific English.
But the foundation is who nominated him. That's who we got the request from.
right, I understand that. I understand. But that's just my comment. That's all.
Okay. Do I have a motion to call for?
Can I ask a question? Are
Yes.
you guys okay with the resume and not the application? because our new rules state the application, so I want to make sure that we stay the same all the way through. Are you okay when we get a resume like this?
I think we need to change the rule to include resume or,
But I think wasn't the vacancy was coming prior to us changing the rule anyway.
Right.
So.
I think she's
think
asking for
it's-
future.
I think the rule change that we instituted for pretty much can't take effect till next year just because of the timing that we passed it. So I'm okay with the resume, but all the vacancies that were coming up were gonna be filled before
Right.
we passed the rules. So this year with the questionnaire, I think it's almost moot until next year starts.
And then do a questionnaire and resume
Right.
next year.
So are we changing the rule?
No, it's the questionnaire, the questionnaire would start next year.
So from
because-
now on, no resumes, just strictly questionnaire?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. All right, that being said, does anybody else have any more questions? If not, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make one.
Motion made by Mrs. Angela, do I have a second? Second by Mr. Midges, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the second appointment that we have tonight is for the Board of Zoning Appeals. And this is, an appointment to Mr. Richard Waltz. And all of you should have gotten his form. And, it is for a 3-year term, which, starts on January 1st, 2021 and goes through December 31st, 2023. Mayor, Judge.
Yes, so I want to clear some, there's some miscommunication with Mr. Waltz. He also sits on the utility review board. And so when we contacted him, he doesn't have email, so we had to mail him the forms. And I think there's some miscommunication, so we filled it out as if it was a reappointment to the utility review board, and not the BZA. So we mailed it back. I said, well, the purpose of the application is to know who you're looking at for possible adding to the board, which he sits on the BZA now. So I let it go through, because it does give all the important information, even though it's geared towards utility development, utility review. But if you want that redone for the BZA specifically.
He currently sits on the BCA right now.
He currently sits on BZA and utility building review. Yes.
Any questions about that or comments?
I just have a question, I guess. Did anyone else apply? I'm just concerned because he doesn't have an email, he doesn't have, in this uncharted time that we have right now, I feel like technology is kind of important.
He has a phone, so we still call him. He's attended all the meetings, great input. So when we advertised for it last year, we received a few resumes and they're kind of just for.
I think that his qualifications, the form that he sent in, since he has so much, history with the city, I think that he'll be a good, and he's already on the board, and he worked in utilities and what have you. Does anyone else have any more questions about this? If not, do I have a motion to call for his appointment? Motion made by Mr. Midges and seconded by Mrs. Angela. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, now we can have miscellaneous discussion if anybody has anything at all left to say. No? No questions? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion made by Mr. Midges and seconded by Mrs. Devevic. And we are adjourned at 7:52.
Okay, that ends our committee meetings, and we will go into committee the whole meeting in 2 minutes.
Oh, no problem.
Are you saying that even? Yeah, Joe, do it. Well, you have an assistant.
Did you get my message?
Which one?
I asked you about it.
Okay, yeah, I did. I don't have it yet, but. There's Zeta on Wednesday, and they promised to give me all of that then. So it should be okay. Sure.
And I can even send them a it's right here.
Yeah.
It's right
I was gonna say, I hope I didn't get on it.
Oh, yeah.
From the last one that was already approved in that.
You guys are talking. Yeah.
Oh, I heard you. I think I heard you about it.
Congratulations on your appointment.
Yeah.
There you go.
You what?
In the party for you?
No, no parties allowed.
Take over the trunks.
Outside there. You can ask
Yeah, I don't.
Make sure we hold their feet to the fire. Are you in?
At some point.
Good.
Okay, yeah, I'm seeing.
So far, apparently that's harder to do.
It's getting harder, that's for sure. No, I've been the same way, but we kept our distance. Got an 85-year-old mother-in-law, she's right there too. Been pretty quiet.
Oh, you talk about,
I
Doesn't know it's working.
email Renee. I don't know. Was that you email
No.
comments tonight?
I will.
No, someone else. It was after 4 o'clock.
No, I left. I left about 5, yeah, 4 or 5 minutes. So, I will.
Oh, it would have been after that. It definitely was after.
How they do?
Yeah, I know.
That's Ward 6, Carol.
Right. No, it's not my ward, it's all over.
Okay, let's get started.
Yeah. What, was he gonna comment?
I mean,
He wanted to send me an email. How did you do it? Oh, no, he sent me an email. You write the email.
If you want to, you have to read about your email.
Oh, yeah.
No, I know, I said you may be gone, I didn't know. Yeah, that's it. I was done I don't want to say it's the same, that's it's a problem. It's addressed to me.
What's that?
Do you want to I left already?
I think you left.
I'm not sure.
It was depressing. No, I think the point was that he wanted the director,
We've got some.
like, they have,
First of all, next week.
can anybody rate anything though next week?
We have both committees next week.
Oh,
so I
yeah,
can read
you're
it
right,
out.
okay. Okay, yeah, that's good. That way you can read what you actually see. I don't know if it's the same. But I do know that they, reached out to me and asked me if he could come to the meeting, and I said, no. Because I have a message. But I said I had to be before 4, and I didn't get back from
Okay, I call this committee of the whole meeting today is Monday, December 7th, 2020, the Barberton City Council. It is 8 o'clock. Could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and then a minute of silence for Phyllis Taylor.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. In case you don't know who Phyllis Taylor is, she is Barberton history. She wrote the history books. She wrote everything. I worked with her a lot on the last couple books she did at the Centennial. And the lady knew everything about Barberton and wrote it down, and we're blessed to have it. Okay, citizens addressing council.
I have one from Mr. Robert Augustinovich, 405 Grandview Avenue, Barberton. Members of council and others, why did Barberton Public Fire Union take Barberton and its citizens to binding arbitration under Ohio's 1983 collective bargaining law, which needs to be asked? Has this 1983 Ohio binding arbitration law recognized public use of safety forces against the city and its citizens? One issue that the Barberton Public Fire Union rejected from the city citizens contract offer 2/26/2020 was overtime rate changes that would change how overtime is calculated in Article 22 of their and the city citizens CBA. Most firefighters work 48 hours per week or 24.96 hours per year at an hourly rate of $15.45 for for $38,553.44 per year, up to $37.77, or $94,275.96 per year for 2019. Their overtime rate is calculated by dividing their annual salary by 2080, then multiplying it by time and 1/2, which equals $38,553.44, divided by 2080 equals $18.53, times 1.5 equals $27.80 per overtime hour, up to $94,275.96, divided by 2080 equals $45.32, times 1.5 equals $67.98 per overtime hour. Their normal hourly rate is $15.45 times 1.5, which equals to $23.17, up to $37.77 times 1.5 equals $56.65 for 2019. Why are they getting these extra overtime tax dollars, $4.15 up to $11.33 above their normal hourly overtime at the times and 1/2 rate for 2019? How long has the city citizens been paying these extra tax dollars above the normal hourly overtime rate to these firefighters' 10 contracts? The damage to the relationship between the citizens' trust and the city's budget by its public fire union and the city appears to be substantial. Just look at the failed property tax levy. The request by the city citizens to firefighters to change this unusual provision in Article 22 in the CBA is reasonable. To remove the artificial 2080 rate and replace it with the wording normal hourly rate is the reasonable thing to do for the citizens, city citizens. This Article 22 would then conform to norms in other public and private unions, CBAs in Ohio. Why has the Barberton Public Fire Union and the city not informed its citizens about these extra tax dollars being paid above the normal hourly overtime rate? Thank you, stay safe in these struggling times, and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Okay. All right, we'll go right into our committee reports. First off is Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning, Annexation, and Codes met this evening at 6:30. All members were present, and council members were present, along with guests as noted on my sheet. Legislation requests 9. Current legislation, we have resolution number 147, 2020, titled Amending Barberton Codified Ordinances, Chapter 670, Chapter 1422, and Chapter 1444. Had a first reading November 30th. Second reading will be next week. Discussion, lots of discussion with this. Everybody agreed on the proposed amount in the legislation. Talk about the tax office, how long it takes to collect the money. So there's been a lot of discussion with that, and hopefully in the next year to come, we can continue with discussion. The next is resolution number 148, 2020, titled Amending Barberton Codified Ordinances, Chapter 1478, Rental Registration. Had a first reading November 30th. Have a second reading next week. Lots of discussion with this too. It was all agreed that we will have it in the legislation, that we will revisit this legislation every 2 years. With that, the mayor will have a report that kind of lets us know the money coming in, the money going out. We would like to be able to hire 2 more employees in that building department. And we checked other cities. We're pretty much comparable except for Beechwood. And then when we came back to miscellaneous discussion, design review board was canceled for tomorrow. And with that, I pass.
Okay, so Mrs. Hancock, you said this was your amending the ordinance to read, you're gonna revisit every 2 years?
Yes,
You want it in the ordinance?
yes.
Are you gonna let me know how you guys want this all worded and where and everything?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is street sidewalks and lighting, Mr. Greer.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. President. Street sidewalk and lighting met today, December 7th, 2020 at 6 p.m. here in the Active Adult Center. All members of the committee were present. All members of the council were present and guests noted on my sheet. We had no request for legislation today. For miscellaneous discussion, I asked Mr. Tracy about an update on the Fifth Street project. Kenmore Construction should be wrapping up the water line since they're pouring concrete, and they will be revisiting Fifth Street to tidy up a little bit here shortly. I also inquired about the street program next year. With this year's road program put on hold, would that mean that we could double our road program next year? The answer was that we could possibly beef it up or double using funds that we held back this year. On that discussion, Mrs. Debevick and Mr. Heidick both inquired about issue 8 money and how it was spent, and if we used it on anything else. The answer was issue 8 money has not been used for anything else. Let's see. The next thing was I asked Mr. Tracy if we still have time to get road work done, road patches, potholes, and as long as the weather cooperates, we still will be able to address road hazards such as potholes and such. So we still need to just submit as we would to the service department through the website or him directly. With that, there was nothing else. We adjourned at 6:12 p.m. and with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. City Utilities, Mrs. Colbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities met last Monday in the Active Adult Center. We had 2 requests for legislation. One was a letter from Mr. Tracy to allow the mayor to amend the electric supply agreement with Energy Harbor. And the second was a letter from Mr. Weaver requesting legislation to enter into a 2-year contract with Riemann Hager Environmental Laboratories for the analysis services for 2021 and 2022. We'll be voting on both of those next week. And with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Public Welfare and Safety, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Welfare and Safety met last week, and we had 2 pieces of legislation in which we voted on. Well, we only have one, I'm sorry, the other one was referred to finance. And we haven't met since. I would like to ask, I've decided that I'm gonna, as I glanced at the email that I received from the citizen, it says, addresses it as the chair of safety. So would it be appropriate for me to read and it's asking me to read the email? Would it be appropriate for me to read the email during this portion, during the safety?
Sure.
Or should I wait it until the end? Okay. It's addressed to Dear Honorable Councilwoman DeBevick. I am the attorney who represents Building Tomorrow LLC, doing business as Barberton Area Sports Bar, in their application for a new liquor license to operate a bar at 555 West Ford Avenue, Barberton, Ohio 44203. And I am writing on behalf of the applicant for the license. It is my understanding that you will be considering an objection to the issuance of this new liquor license at the Safety Committee meeting this evening, and that you are the current chair of the Safety Committee. For your reference, I have attached a copy of the application for the new license. The location where Building Tomorrow wishes to operate is the location of the former Knotty Pine Bar, which operated at that location for many years. Previously, there were objections to a license being transferred to this location from the Fast Lanes Bowling Alley filed by the Barberton City Council. These objections were heard by the Department of Liquor Control at a hearing where testimony was presented by the city and the Salvation Army and their respective representatives. The objections to the transfer were overruled by the department and the license was successfully transferred. The license that was transferred for this location, then expired without being renewed. The members of Building Tomorrow LLC wish to open a bar at this location. Since the Knotty Pine had closed, it has not operated as a bar since prior to the objections filed by the Barberton City Council, and the property remains closed. The Department of Liquor Control heard all of the objections to the transfer and overruled those objections. It seems now that the Barberton City Council wishes to renew these objections. The application for this new license was submitted on behalf of the applicant in July of 2020. Due to the pandemic, this business has been delayed from proceeding in having its application considered as it would normally and on a much longer time frame. The objection you are now considering will extend that process much further. Although the objection will extend the time frame considerably, I am not sure there will be any new grounds for the objection that the Department of Liquor Control has not already heard and issued a transfer in spite of such objections. For your further reference, I have attached here two portions of the hearing transcript where the City Council's objection was heard in July of 2019. Should you wish to have a copy of the entire transcript, please let me know and I will send it along. The entire transcript is 137 pages. Building Tomorrow LLC and its members wish to open a new business in the city of Barberton. Their intent is to conduct business in a manner that is not disruptive to their neighbors, such as the Salvation Army, and hope to cooperate with their neighbors. Notably, in the past month or so, there were no objections by City Council to a new liquor license being issued for Wasabi Express LLC, located in the plaza on 5th Street Northeast. Further, in close proximity to the Salvation Army are other establishments who sell alcoholic beverages, including Ignite Brewing Company. I do not believe there were any objections to the Ignite liquor license. I respectfully request that you and the other members of Barberton City Council vote against the objection to this application for a new permit. Should you or any other council members have any questions in this regard, please let me know. Thank you for your time and consideration in the matter. Sincerely, John Lysenko, LPA, John Lysenko, Attorney at Law, 2715 Manchester Road, Akron, Ohio, 44319. I don't necessarily know, but I want to disclose his telephone number if that's necessary. So with that, safety passes.
Thank you. Just for clarification, the liquor licenses referenced there are all three different liquor licenses. The one that Mr. Bevick referenced was a D1, D2, D3. The one for Wasabi was a D5, and Ignite, I believe, is still an A1A class license. So they are all three separate licenses.
I would just like to note, I simply read an email that was asked of me to read on the record, and I have not had an opportunity to look at any documents that were attached to it. And it is public record, it's my city email, so.
Good.
I
just wanted to, since there was a reference, I want to make it known that they are three separate types of licenses.
Oh, I didn't know if I was allowed to entertain any questions, because not really a question period, but yes, sir.
I thought in the beginning this was my ward, so I walked down Ford Avenue, I spoke to 4 residents. There was no.
What, Knotty Pine? That's
That's
not the fourth.
No, so there was 6 one. I thought at first, when the first time it was brought up, they sent me a letter to the council of the 4th ward. And it's dry, so it's 6th ward. But I still walk down and just get any complaints.
Sure.
And, no complaints at all. And one of the houses is owned, same person, and it's family members, no complaints. So if you do fall down there,
No, I have never gotten any complaints from down there, but it's not just up to the council, which.
No, well, no, I know,
Surprising about that.
I know.
since Jim was a council person.
I simply read an email that I received, I just was asked to read it on the record and.
Sure.
okay, this should say, the residents, neighbors, 4 houses next door, and no complaints at all, and we'd like to see it back opened up. So be, that's all. Again, messenger, that was my word, that's why I was walking down.
Right, but there's other people involved, you know, it's not just the
Yeah, it's
residents.
state, I mean, after,
Yeah.
realistically, if it goes to state will probably allow it. You know, complaints. The guy got in the record, he was applying for it. We'll see.
That's all I have. With that, safety passes.
Thank you very much. Rules Marketing Development, Mr. Shorter Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules Marketing and Development met on November 30th in the Active Adult Center. All members present and other guests as noted. We had no request for legislation to call for. We also had no miscellaneous discussion as well. We adjourned at 6:05. With that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Environmental Health and Social Services, Mr. Gaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services met December 7th, 2020, at 6:13 at the Adult Center. All members present. Other council members also present and noted. We had 2 requests for legislation. First one was a draft ordinance for Tyler Foundation for King's Flowers to honor and give public recognition to private family as they celebrate 100 years of operating King's Flowers. The second one was ordinance also, foundation for Jacob Clemens, to honor and give public recognition to Jacob Clemens and become a professional WWE referee. We have one miscellaneous discussion. Mr. Bettis was asking about the Sunshine Health and Southern View. The mayor and also safety director answered some questions. We also brought up, we do a prayer for Norton Fire Department Chief Mike Schultz, who is COVID-19 positive. And that we adjourned at 6:29. Not that statement.
Thank you. City Properties, Parks and Recreation, Mr. Heidi.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties Parks and Recreation met Monday, November 30th, 2020, at 6 p.m. here in the Active Adult Center. All members of the committee present, all council, and all guests noted. We had no request for legislation. Our miscellaneous discussion involved the toy drive that we're looking for businesses and individuals to sponsor. We've worked with the schools to identify kids that may be in need. We ask that it's no more than value of $25. Ms. Kara Lisenko at the cityofbarberton.com or klisenko at cityofbarberton.com or 330-848-6740 is the contact for it. And President Medges made sure to comment that the lights are looking fantastic down at the lake, which they are. I've been around it quite a few times. We adjourned at 6:02 on a quick meeting, and with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Finance Personnel, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance and Personnel Committee met tonight, December 7th, and the meeting began at 7:30. All members of the committee were present, as well as guests that are noted on my sheet. We had one piece of legislation tonight, and it is a draft ordinance titled Adopting the Reader Rules and Regulations. And this is to adopt the rules and regulations of the Regional Income Tax Agency, which will be our new income tax provider. And they sent welcome letters out this week to the residents of the city. And we, all of council received the rules for RITA, and it's 67 pages long. So I guess we'll just keep it for reference. Save it to our hard drive. No one had any questions or comments about that particular piece of legislation. The second thing we had tonight was the finance report, and it was given by Mr. Flaker, and it was accepted by the committee, so that will be passed next week. We had two appointments on the agenda for this evening. The first was an appointment of Mr. Trevor Hunt to the Barberton Community Foundation for a 3-year term, which will start on January 1st, 2021 and go through December 31st, 2023. The second was the appointment of Mr. Richard Waltz to the Board of Zoning Appeals. This is for a 3-year term as well, and it will go from January 1st, 2021 through December 31st at 7:52. And with that, finance will pass.
Thank you very much. Mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank everyone who came out for open office hours this past weekend. All protocols were strictly followed. Had 7 members of the community show up. Some of the comments that were made, or the topics that we discussed, questions they had. B&W campus or buildings, we are having ongoing discussions with the new property owner. So at least bi-weekly, we're scheduling some showings of some of the buildings. In the past 2 years, I've taken at least 20 or more different businesses through their buildings. So trying to work on that front as diligently as possible. Some of the topics that were brought up were the fire department wages and overtime. Rental units, proposed legislation that's in front of council now with the rental units, grass, and property maintenance, and how we really need to make a statement and make some changes. And we're only going to make a real impact and changes if you make the changes that are in the proposal. And some of the comments from the residents were increasing the fees more than what the proposal is. So, and then lastly, some of the comments on the road program. So we know that the roads are bad. We know that, we also know that we want to be where we are today without issue 8 and the passage of that from the voters. We've touched over 100 roads in a short amount of time. We've secured over $15 million in federal funds for the main arteries. We wouldn't be able to do that or touch the roads we did without the passage of issue 8. So a lot of times the public focuses on the negative. The comments made on Saturday were very positive, that we do have this program, and that the roads, it may not be getting done as fast as everyone wants, but nothing ever does. And at least there's a dedicated funding mechanism for the roads. So, still moving forward with the food drive. This goes toiletries and non-perishable food items through the end of January. Those will be donated to the Active and Salvation Army. Also working on some other initiatives with some of the local nonprofits and different organizations in town to kind of umbrella everything that we're doing that's happening in town, so it's a little more efficient and more effective in its implications. And then on the COVID front, as I mentioned earlier, we had a lot of discussion. These things change daily, and there's so much. This is a serious thing. This has been going on, and this year's kind of flown by, in my opinion, because every day there's so much information going by. So I want to update you again with some different numbers. I look at these on a daily basis, but so currently the state of Ohio has over 484,000 cases confirmed. This is over 63,000 new cases since last month. This is the 4th week in a row with over 50,000 cases confirmed in 1 week. Again, this is going to expected to increase, continue with the holidays and just spending time with family and friends, people getting back to work, different things of that nature. Also, as I mentioned earlier, there's a backlog of testing. So tests are, I don't want to say sitting on the shelf, but they're kind of, there's a backlog. So, but the lab capacity, the number of test kits, all of that is being maxed out right now. So that's kind of slowing everything up. Deaths in the state of Ohio stand at just over 7,000. This is an increase of 9.22%. Last week it was 6,429. So, statewide, the presumed recovery cases are increasing as well. So that's good. Hospitalizations are increasing. It's an increase from last week of 10%. Almost 30,000 of COVID patients that are hospitalized. The scary part of that is talking to hospital administrators, they're not only hospitalized this round, they're in ICU. Where in the springtime or throughout the summer, they're hospitalized with them being let go. These are ICU patients. Not all of them, but more than in spring. Here in the state of Ohio, there's currently 8 counties in the highest level, purple, including Summit, 72 counties at the level 3, which is red, 8 counties at level 2, orange, and no counties are at the lowest level, which is yellow. A little closer to home, Summit County, there's 18,525 cases, which is an 18% increase from last week. Deaths in Summit County stand at 412, which is 56 new deaths, or almost 16% increase from last week. So 56 new deaths in Summit County that are COVID related. The Summit County average for 7 days of new cases is at 365. Last week when I reported this, it was 310. So it's gone up quite a bit for the 7-day average. Again, there's a backlog of tests, and so some of those numbers are being put in there that were positive tests from before with the backlog. But that's expected to increase. Here in 44203, there's just over 1,000 cases. Last week there was 873, so just over 1,000 this week. It's an increase of 214. There's 25 deaths in 44203, which is an increase of 6 from last week. The Summit County Health Department is working with the Summit County Sheriff's Department to continue to monitor, patrol, and educate businesses and homeowners, and gatherings. And it's complaint driven, but they're still doing that, trying to, before they start shutting people down or citing people. And as I mentioned before, we hear rumors, and one popped up the other week about assisted living facilities here in Bartlett. So we're talking, as I mentioned before, I was talking to some of the leaders at that time. They didn't want to be kind of attached to any rumors that may turn out to be false. But if there's rumors out there, please contact us, because again, want to either shut them down with facts or want to confirm them and move forward and see how we can address it. So there's rumors sometimes have a bad connotation, but if you hear something, the chief warden says, if you hear something, say something. Let's see what's being said out there. Let's put some facts to it and move forward. So if you hear anything, please let us know. And we continue here in the city of Barberton to pass out masks and face shields. So if you need any of them, please contact my office. If you have constituents that need face shields or masks, please contact me. I have an ongoing email chain with the clergy in Barberton, with the nonprofits in Barberton, and the business community in Barberton. So we already had programs throughout the summer where we staged in the parks and gave out masks. And we've done that since it started. So if you have a need, please contact my office. Just finally, today's Pearl Harbor Day. With everything going on, it's easy to kind of get sidetracked, and we just don't want to forget Pearl Harbor, or ever forget the people that have put their lives on the line for our freedoms, and for us to be able to get together like this and discuss legislation. So just remember those who have served our country and put their lives on the line. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Any remarks from the body? Okay, I have a couple things. Next week, we are going to have a double meeting. We'll start out with a legislative meeting, and then we'll go into the committee of the whole. That way, we will not have to have a meeting at the end of the month, which would be the 28th. This is the way it's been since I've been on the council. So. Then we also need to set up an interview time for a replacement for our clerk. We have 4 resumes right now, and the deadline is tomorrow. We need to get this taken care of. Any suggestions for when we can meet to pick a new, because we're all gonna have to do this, because we're all gonna have to work with this person. So, the sooner the better. I was thinking maybe this Saturday. There's only 4 people, so it won't take that long. We'll do about a 20-minute interview. And so that's less than an hour and a half. So if we started, let's say at 9 or 10, we could be done by, within an hour and a half. It's up to you, Can everybody make it on a Saturday morning?
I can.
You can? Okay. Anybody can,
This Saturday,
this Saturday.
I got something I have to see.
We're not gonna meet on Sunday.
I have a business.
Oh, 1 o'clock Saturday.
I could do it at 1 o'clock on Saturday, but
I can do one.
Everybody can do 1? 1 o'clock Saturday? Okay. Well, if we can get the majority of us here at 1 o'clock on Saturday, that's when we'll meet right here,
okay.
okay? And we'll do 20-minute interviews, and there's 4 of them, so it shouldn't take that long. So, and then hopefully we can pick somebody, because we're running out of time, and we need Renee to help this person. Yes,
Are we gonna get copies of the resumes before Saturday?
yes,
Okay.
yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
wait, the deadline's Wednesday, so I'll have them in your Thursday packets,
Okay, good.
because I'll be off on Friday.
Okay, sounds good.
Can you be here on Saturday?
I will have to, it's a public meeting, so I'll have to set it up. The interviews, you can go into executive session, but you can't vote in executive session.
Taking a party afterwards. Let's have a party for you.
I have to go to work after that, and I do have a restaurant and bar. I'm gonna have a party.
Okay, so it's Saturday, 1 o'clock.
Saturday, 1 o'clock. Anything else? Okay, this meeting is adjourned at 8:35.
I'm Mr. Governor. That's it. Tracy, it's a pleasure to be here. If you're needed, come on here to work.